2 years ago, you brought the Matthew Passion for the first time with a very small ensemble. Why?
Well, it's not easy to say. I love very much choirs. I did it all my life. I sung in choirs a lot. And well, still, when the music is good for choirs, I really love to use them. Now, the question is, where do you help Bach's music within the best way? Is it a large group of musicians or a small one? Well, I think a lot of people agree with me that Bach's music, with its complex structures, with its dense musical information, with sometimes complex inner voices who are making beautiful counterpoint with outer voices, so high parts or low parts. This all could be so complex that when you reduce yourself to the level of almost chamber music, where musicians are used to give a sort of individual contribution to such a process, that helps tremendously to open the music and to make it clear for the listener. There's also another way of looking to this, and that is a sort of historical way. If you look to how Bach performed himself, then it is clear that he didn't use big orchestras or big choirs. I think at the most he's using only 2 or 3 players or 2 or 3 singers in a group. That's it. So compared to the forces now and then used in our times, that is really small. And there are even people who thinking that Bach, from time to time, even was using smaller voices by just having one musician per part. So then you really are speaking about chamber music. Now, in this whole issue of sizes, ideal sizes for Bach's music, there's another interesting thing, and that is that in the course of the centuries, the instrumental word grow very much apart from the vocal word. So in an orchestra, for example, one is used very much to play together in an ensemble, and when there are soli, then the first players could be the leader of the violin group, or could be the first player in the wind group, is playing his or her solo. And you could say it's a situation of a primus inter pares. It's feeling very natural for everybody because the orchestra is organized like that, and it's actually unthinkable that one of the players just goes out of the orchestra for a time and that another player comes in and plays the solo, and then it's simply not done in that way. And in the vocal word, especially in the 19th century, soloists grow really apart from the people singing in groups, in choirs. So in the 20th century we have had the situation that you could sing either in a choir or you was a soloist, and these two had nothing really in common with each other. So there were separate worlds. Now, if one thing is clear, then that is that Bach didn't have also separate worlds in the singers' ensembles. So one of the boys in the little group, it was not a big choir in Bach's time, one of the boys sung the soprano arias in the Matthäus Passion, and then afterwards he did a step backward and sung in the chorales or in the choruses. And I restored that situation because I liked very much the impact of making a piece together and being together, and it also reduces the borderlines between singers and instrumentalists. And then I like very much the idea that one of the musicians is doing a step forward and giving an individual reaction. That is what we could call an aria, for example. That has a completely different impact on not only the musicians in our group, but also on the listeners, because in one case you are looking to an active group of musicians making a story, and so now and then one of them comes out and does give an individual reaction. While in the traditional performances, Jesus is sitting for hours on a chair, and then he stands and sings 2 lines, and then he's sitting again for another hour, which is very static and actually a little bit like oratorio and opera in the 19th century, where one was used to this kind of performances. And I think going back to the way Bach performed his music is a great help to understand his music and to make clear how the relations are in ensembles and how the singers relate to the instrumentalists. So I love to use these small forces, and that's what you will see in the recording of the Matthew Passion, where actually the singer who sings Jesus can easily switch to the bass part in a chorale or to the bass part in one of the choruses. And of course you don't then have the situation of singing roles. I mean, it is a role, but it is like telling your children a story. I mean, no child would expect that his father or mother is having 10 assistants to tell all the smaller roles in a children's book. I mean, you do it yourself, so you can easily switch from one part to another. That's a little bit the kind of storytelling in the 17th and 18th century. So if you're listening to it, you're not so much listening to the person who sings, but you listen through the person to the story, and then it doesn't matter that Jesus is singing a bass part in an ensemble some bars later.